Emma Carter sat in the corner booth of the Willow Café, her hands wrapped around a mug of coffee that had long gone cold. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, illuminating the soft swirl of dust motes in the air and casting golden light over the hanging ivy. It was a beautiful autumn afternoon in Seattle, the kind that usually lifted her spirits. But today, all she felt was the familiar heaviness of dread. Another blind date, the fifth this year, all arranged by her well-meaning sister. Emma had agreed only to silence the constant nudging, the sympathetic looks, and the quiet pity that showed up in her family's eyes every holiday when she arrived alone. At 32, Emma had built a good life. She taught literature at a local college, had published 2 well-reviewed poetry collections with a small press, volunteered at the animal shelter on weekends, and surrounded herself with genuine friends. By any reasonable measure, she was fulfilled. But to her family, and to a society that never stopped reminding her, she was somehow incomplete because she hadn't found the one. The problem, as her mother so often hinted, was her size. Emma was a plus-size woman, curvy, soft and radiant in her own quiet way, in a world obsessed with sharp edges and visible bones. She'd spent years hating herself, counting calories, chasing impossible numbers, before finally finding peace in her own body. She was healthy, active, confident. But that never silenced the comments, the unsolicited advice, or the way men's eyes sometimes slid right past her, as if she didn't exist. Emma, she looked up. A man stood beside her table, and her breath caught. He was striking, tall, dark-haired, with sharp features, softened by an uncertain smile. His tailored charcoal suit fit perfectly, and his blue-green eyes seemed to hold a mix of confidence and gentleness. This couldn't be her date. Men who looked like this didn't need blind dates, and they certainly didn't get matched with women like her. "I'm Daniel," he said, extending his hand. "Daniel Hayes, your sister Lily set this up." "That's me," Emma managed, shaking his hand and trying not to show her confusion. "Please, have a seat." As Daniel sat across from her, she took in the small details, the expensive watch, the calm self-assurance, the way the barista had instantly brightened when he walked in. Everything about him screamed success. Her sister had mentioned he was doing well. But clearly, she had downplayed the truth. Knowing Emma would never have agreed if she'd known just how far apart their worlds were. "I have to admit," Daniel said, his smile faintly nervous, "I haven't been on a blind date since college." "Why did you agree to this one?" Emma let out a breath, half laugh, half sigh. "Let's just say Lily can be persuasive." Daniel laughed, and the sound softened something in her. "She works for me, actually. At Hayes Innovations. She cornered me in the break room with pictures of you and stories about your poetry." "I didn't stand a chance." Emma flushed, burying her embarrassment behind a polite smile. "I'm sorry about that. Lily means well, but she can be relentless. Honestly, you really don't have to stay. I'm sure you have better things to do with your afternoon than fulfilling an obligation to a pushy employee." "An obligation?" Daniel frowned. "Is that what you think this is?" "Isn't it?" Emma met his gaze steadily. "Let's be honest. You look at me and you look at you. We both know how this works. You're here because Lily guilted you into it, or because you're too kind to say no. So let's just skip the polite small talk and part ways as friendly strangers." Daniel studied her, silent for a long moment. His voice when he spoke was calm but steady. "Do you always assume the worst about people's intentions?" "I assume what experience has taught me," Emma said softly. "I know what I look like, Daniel. I know I'm not the kind of woman men like you usually date. Men like me, successful men, confident men, in society calls desirable." Daniel leaned back, eyes thoughtful. "You're right, this date isn't starting well. But not for the reason you think. Then enlighten me, because you've already written the ending, he said gently. You've decided I'm shallow, that I couldn't possibly be interested in you. You've built walls before I've even had a chance to knock. Emma opened her mouth, then closed it again. I agreed to this because Lily showed me your poetry, Daniel continued. She had your book on her desk. I picked it up one afternoon, started reading, and I couldn't stop. Your words are extraordinary. They're brave, raw, honest. You see beauty where most people never even look. I wanted to meet the woman who wrote them. That's kind, Emma said, her voice trembling despite herself. It's the truth, Daniel said. Yes, I've dated the kind of women everyone expects. And most of those relationships were hollow, beautiful shells with nothing inside. I'm tired of that. I want depth. I want real. That's a lovely speech, Emma whispered, tears pricking her eyes. But I've spent my entire life being told I'm not enough. That all my accomplishments mean nothing unless I shrink myself to fit someone else's idea of beauty. So forgive me if I find it hard to believe a man who looks like you could want anything real with a woman like me. Daniel was silent for a long beat. Then softly he said, You're right. No one marries a fat girl. The words hit like a slap, but before Emma could react, he continued, At least that's what society keeps saying, which is exactly why we should prove them all wrong. She stared at him. What? Every person who ever made you feel less than. Every man who looked past you. Every family member who pitied you. Let's prove them all wrong, not because you need to, but because you deserve to be seen, Emma, exactly as you are. You don't even know me, she whispered. Then let me, Daniel said. Let me know you, the real you, the one who writes about light and shadow, the one your sister calls the bravest person she knows. Give me the chance to find out who you really are. Something inside Emma cracked. The wall she'd built, brick by brick, began to crumble. Why would you want to take on someone else's baggage? She asked quietly. Daniel smiled faintly. Because I have my own. My ex-wife left me 2 years ago. Said I worked too much, cared more about the company than about her. She wasn't wrong. I've been protecting myself ever since, dating casually, never letting anyone in. Maybe we're both scared. Maybe that's exactly why we should try. He reached across the table, not touching her, just offering. Two people who've been hurt understand how precious it is when someone finally sees you and chooses you anyway. Emma looked at his hand, then back at his face. She saw vulnerability, not perfection. Slowly, she placed her hand in his. Okay, she said. Let's start over. Hi, I'm Emma Carter. I teach literature, write poetry, and I'm terrified, but I'm trying to be brave. Daniel's smile lit up his face. Hi, Emma. I'm Daniel Hayes. I run a tech company. Work too many hours, and I'm terrified too, but I'm willing to try if you are. That afternoon stretched into evening as they talked, really talked. He told her about growing up with demanding parents, the loneliness of success, the emptiness of appearances. She told him about fighting for self-worth, about learning to love her body, about the quiet fear of never being enough. My mother once told me, Emma said softly, that I'd only find love if I lost weight. Daniel reached across and took her hand again. You are worthy, he said firmly. Exactly as you are. Their first date became a second, then a third. Daniel came to her poetry readings, sitting in the front row, beaming with pride. She visited his office, meeting his team, who clearly adored and respected him, including Lily, who looked ready to burst with happiness. It wasn't easy. There were stares, whispers, people who assumed she was his assistant. Daniel's mother even said at dinner, "She's lovely, dear, but is she really the kind of woman you want to be seen with at corporate events?" Daniel's response was calm but sharp. "She's exactly the woman I want to be seen with everywhere." And when Emma's aunt whispered, "Don't get too attached, sweetheart. Men like him don't marry women like you," Emma smiled and said, "Maybe not. But Daniel isn't men like him, and I'm not women like me. We're just us." A year later, Daniel took her back to the Willow Café. Same booth, same sunlight streaming through the glass. He handed her a small leather journal. "Open it," he said. Inside were pages of his writing, notes, reflections, small poems about her. On the last page, in simple script, he'd written, "Will you continue this story with me forever?" Tears filled her eyes. "Yes," Emma whispered. 1,000 times yes. Their wedding wasn't extravagant, it was real. Emma wore a gown that celebrated her body instead of hiding it. Daniel's vows promised to always choose her as she was, and to remind her of her worth when she forgot. And years later, Emma published her third poetry collection, proving them wrong. The dedication read, "To Daniel, who saw me when I couldn't see myself." And to everyone learning they are enough, exactly as they are, because sometimes the greatest act of rebellion is believing you're worthy of love, just as you are.